All right, welcome back, everybody. This is part two after Dan has graciously relocated himself back to his flat where he has stronger Wi-Fi than our previous location. And so, yeah, we're going to pick it back up again. And Dan, take it away.
So in part one, you may remember we got to here. However, I made another blank so that this is where people said it started to get really choppy. So I'm going to carry on with this one. And then I might switch over to this one because this one's a lot nicer because it's beach. This one is, I don't know what actually. I think it's some kind of really light, dry cherry.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So I think maybe if people have questions, yeah, from kind of part one, that they either remembered asking and would like clarifying because of articulation or whatever, and go for it. But what I will say again is I've made the cuts here, one's lower than the other one to get that kind of curve. But luckily the piece of wood also had a nice little curve in it. So I'm kind of just going with that.
Okay.
What am I doing? So actually on this one, I'm just going to clean up the top surface of here just so I can get a clearer picture of what is actually going on. Oh wow, it's carving really nice. And I think, unfortunately, the tree cam was a better angle, for kind of seeing down.
So one question actually that I did have for you, when you're like in terms of order of operations, are you going towards getting the overall thickness of your handle, for example, right from the beginning, and then doing your tapering and your faceting and all of that? What are you shooting for? What's your process about, kind of getting to that point?
Yeah, I suppose that's a kind of a classic thing to think about, isn't it? Because I think I know when I first started and when I've been teaching a lot, it's usually the one thing that people miss is, yeah, the order of things, and getting a good order is going to benefit you when it comes later to the knife work. So my kind of thing, first of all, is that I've already axed a nice shape on the underside. I'm fairly happy with that. I know I've got plenty of thickness. And so now I'm going to try and create a top surface that somehow mirrors the bottom surface roughly. And I guess I'm also doing the top surface first because I want to just get rid of this area and create a nice surface so I can see what kind of depth I've got here. But you can see I've left quite a bit of depth there anyway.
Yep.
So it's top surface first. Having said that, sometimes what I'll do is actually do the underside first if I'm not so happy with it. But top surface is usually first because I want to get a bit of a curve in here.
Yeah.
That curve to drop nicely into here. And because I've got loads of thickness, I can drop down to that. And because I've already got a nice crank, dropping down on the top surface and losing a bit of crank is not too much of a problem. And I'm doing that by having, I don't know if you can see there, I've kind of got two facets. Someone have a question?
Well, yeah, so I guess what I was trying to get at, I know on the template, right, you've sort of got that, offset ridge line that runs down to the one side. So as you're trying to approach, the one thing I found is the first time I did it, I kind of was, I think I felt like I left my spoon too thick in the middle. But I had already started doing the faceting. So I wanted to take that ridge down a little bit lower, but if I took that ridge off, I'd lose my faceting. And then so then you start chasing, thickness versus facets versus, so that's what I was kind of trying to get at, is it what the general approach is, with that,
Yeah. So I suppose what I'm doing then is that facet is going to start slightly appearing on this side. And it's partly because, so most of these facets and things actually come about just from the way I carve, not necessarily a specific design. And so I'll just make that facet with my left hand on here.
Gotcha.
Immediately create a big wide facet here, which then obviously leaves a smaller one on the right, which is usually a bit steeper.
Yep.
and then I'll just take that down, and that's already given me a bit of a facet.
Okay.
And now I can see my thickness. So now that I can, if I want to.
So now you use that, the top surface as your reference, and then you bring the bottom up to mirror the general shape.
Yeah, the underside here is probably actually the last thing I really tweak.
Okay.
I leave it really thick because I've got a bit of a facet. I know that I've got that shape there. I can tweak that. That's
Yeah.
okay. And now it's about kind of getting a bit of a plan view, a bit nicer, and yeah, leaving everything kind of thick till the end. And that definitely comes from making loads of fuck ups by carving it too thin and then yeah, losing the way.
I am fascinated. I'm fascinated watching Dan switch hands.
Right.
And I think I figured out the secret to Dan's asymmetrical magic is that he's just not as good with his left hand.
You know what? I mean, that's funny, but it's kind of true because it's one of the reasons that this happened, a long leading edge here and a short leading edge here, because on this cut, I just naturally couldn't pull through as much as this cut.
Gotcha.
And then when I first did that, I thought, oh, that's nice. Oh yeah, let's accentuate that a bit. And that is pretty.
So I was making a joke, but what I'm actually thinking is that when you are using, you know how the left and right brain do different things? And when you're using your right and left hand, you're engaging different hemispheres of the brain. I wonder if that lends itself to asymmetrical design somehow. Have you ever carved a whole spoon with just your left hand or just your right hand and see if it comes out different?
No, I think probably I could only just about do that now because I've only just got the hang of being able to use my non-dominant hand to do the thumb push on the back of the bowl. I've only
well, if you wanna do that right now to see the results, we'll hang out.
Be careful what you ask for. And
I was going to say we don't want to see any blood. So.
But someone else was asking on Instagram yesterday about carving, and I was saying, oh well, yeah, I carve with both hands simultaneously, and they were saying, wow, that must be really dangerous. But what I used to do is I used to come along and do one cut, then I used to not cut, but I used to just think, how is that going to work? How is that going to work? Then I could just go back to my other hand and let my dominant hand teach my non-dominant hand, and I would just do it slowly.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it definitely makes life easier.
So that actually, I forget who was asking it before while we were on the break, and speak up to clarify the question, but somebody was sort of asking if you were going to talk at all sort of about your general sort of design approach, you know, philosophy, if you will, like, because you do tend to come up with some very, you know, different, well, to me, like, this is the same, I always use this word with George's spoons because I really admire him. He does asymmetry really well in the sense of they're like that Japanese design sense of balanced asymmetry, as opposed to like my crappy, just poor carving skill asymmetry, shooting for symmetry, but not quite achieving it. So like, is there anything that you would offer in terms of, hints, tips, tricks about how you go about thinking through and coming up with your designs?
So I guess all my designs, and actually I don't really design spoons anymore because I've spent a lot of time designing them, is like you were doing, Chuck, is that I used to just squiggle on the paper and find shapes and lines that I really liked. And obviously they were never symmetrical in any way at all. And so I think just a lot of looking at shapes and drawing shapes that aren't symmetrical, you get to see what works. And annoyingly, I'm just going to say practice is really... Sorry, someone had a question?
No, I think you're good.
Okay.
So just by way of visual reference, what Dan's referring to, and I realize I'm not spotlighted. I don't know what happens if I spot myself in addition. But I don't know if you'll be able to see this because it's probably washing out. But basically, this idea of taking a pencil and just scribbling, just let your hand flow free and scribble on a sheet of paper. And then
Oh, I'm on the edge of my seat.
in that, and this was an idea that I stole from Dan, by the way. So this is not my idea. This was Dan's idea. And
Chuck, you froze at a really unfortunate point during that explanation. I heard you scribble with your hand and then,
That's what I heard.
and that's all. So right after the and then.
well, it just froze again, so I didn't even hear what you said, but I heard you say that I froze. So
You froze.
the point of it was simply that it's just taking and scribbling on a sheet of paper and then looking to find pleasing shapes within that and accentuating it, which was all a Dan suggestion from a wonderful video on spoonclub.co.uk. So I don't want to really go too much more in depth to it, but I would highly recommend that you go and subscribe to Barnes Spoon Club, and Dan has quite a good, set of videos on there actually. That goes into a lot of depth and talks a lot about stuff. But it's a great technique and a really fun one to, play around with and find shapes. So I took and found shapes on that and then started, pulling them out and, using those as templates.
I think the concept that I had in mind for that was to free you up, because I used to do what I'm sure most people would do. I would get my paper and pen, I would draw the measurements, I would draw a center line, and I would start doing that, and it just started getting very repetitive. And so then by just drawing these free lines, and then on a blank piece of wood, you could draw them again, or you could use the copy paper and put them over them. You start seeing things that I think you just would never have come up with before.
That in and of itself is a very left brain, right brain activity. I feel like, I feel like Dan should start a drawing with both sides, like spoon carving with both sides of your brain class.
We did something similar with Amy Umble at the Spoon Hoolie. So she gave us a word. So one of them was hug. So come up with a spoon that represents for you a hug.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did that. And that was quite kind of mind-blowing. Simple, but at the same time, it just makes your brain go, oh.
So that's really nice to hear, because one of the other ones I used to do was I would, instead of looking at a drawing or something, I would look at how something moves. And so I did a lot of spoon carving where I really liked the way a ball bounced. It had this kind of boing, boing, and it had this real spring to it. So a lot of my spoons actually for a while had a facet, so it looked like it went. And I was thinking balls bouncing in pebbles. And so I'm trying to come up with spoons that represented balls bouncing in pebbles.
Dan, what were you doing with that crazy power cut where you were slicing big chips off camera? Were you cutting a big corner on the edge of the handle? Is that what you were doing?
No, I think I was doing the back of the bowl. This is a really soft piece of wood.
No, you were carving like this. You were carving like really big power cuts.
The end, I was carving this little asymmetrical bit there, and partly because it's got a really juicy little crack right in the end. So I was just seeing if I could get through that. But actually, quite like having that little crack there. I think it'll be fun. I think we'll be able to do something with it.
Can you talk about your 106? Is it modified in any way? Is it hollow ground or anything?
It was hollow ground probably several years ago, and then I've never re-hollow ground it. So it's actually, I don't know if we can. I'll tell you how it is modified. Some really shit sharpening. So actually, the tip is really rounded.
I'm always curious when people who carve every day use 106s. Is that because you have a lot of them, or you've never gotten them more? Because I feel like you carve for a little while, you start to get other knives like handed to you. So I didn't know if you do a 106 out of choice or what.
I've never. The only reason I wanted to get a different knife was because I wanted a longer blade. That was it. But this is the knife I've had for the longest. This knife I think I've had for 7 years, and you can see it's like it's a lot more pointy.
Yeah.
And it's got my own handle on, which is a bit longer. This will be what I'll carve with next. This is just a wrapping out one because I don't really care about it.
Got it.
And I get given these usually.
Yeah, when there's a lot of like fascination, and it's easy to get sucked up into the tool mania, if you will. Emmett Van Drysch had a blog post about this the other day about how we fetishize in some ways the tool side of the craft.
Yeah.
Through our Instagram posts and pictures of
Absolutely.
tools, and focusing on, it's like it's a magic bullet that if I just get that, when really what we want is the skill, not necessarily the tool. That's not to say that a better quality tool might not give you, help you achieve a better result at some point, but that we can get very wrapped up in it. So if you were to put yourself on that scale between tool minimalist and our resident tool maximalist George on the other side, that's got like a specialized tool for every cut, you see yourself on that spectrum.
I mean, I'm definitely a minimalist, but that's probably because I can't afford the really nice stuff.
Gotcha.
I think the main thing is that it's really not nice to carve with a shitty tool.
But what's a shitty tool? Because I used to challenge people with really expensive tools, and I would have the shittest Moras, and I would still carve something exactly the same. But the difference is, like you're mentioning, the experience of carving with a really nice tool is very different. However, I think I wouldn't call
a Mora a shitty knife. It's a really good one.
No. I'm talking about the old double-edged hook knife.
Okay, yeah.
That one was a shitty tool.
That's right.
But I think there's a kind of arc of, you imagine you've got a perfectly fine tool, but your skill level has to meet that tool. And then I think,
Definitely.
and then it goes above it. And then there's a certain point where no matter what tool you have, your skill should be so that you can still do something with it and actually learn how to use it and how it works.
I guess what I was trying to ask with my initial question was, there seems a point where after you've been carving long enough, and you're well past that point, because I'm past that point, that if you're still carving with a 106, that's a conscious choice, because either you get a more premium knife as a gift, or because someone wants to offer you one as a swap, or, you know what I mean? There's a certain, when you've been connected with other spoon carvers long enough that, like, if you're carving with a 106, it's because you've turned down more premium knives. So I always wonder when I see a very proficient, well-known professional carver carving with a 106, if that's a like deliberate choice because they have some background reason.
I guess actually, well, firstly, who's offering you all these knives? Can you hook me up? Really sweet knives by some handmade makers for sure.
George, send Dan some knives.
Yeah, I'll send you a bunch of spoons.
You've never had someone say, I'm making a knife, would you try it out for me? Or you've never, like, I got a Nick Westerman Sloyd as a birthday gift from my wife, and my mom chipped in, like that, that kind of thing happens when it's your thing. No?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've got some really nice knives that I've saved up for because I think I could see the value in those knives because I'd carved with certain knives for so long. Then you start thinking, actually, that is what I could really do with. But no, I've not had that. I want that.
I've never felt the need. I never felt the need to upgrade from my 106, but I got a Nick Westerman as a gift, and then a knife maker sent me one to try out, and I hear conversations of that happening from time to time for other people.
Well, it's funny you should say that, actually, but I think it was 2 days ago that someone did say, would you be up for sending you some knives for you to try out and see what you think, and then review them and put on them on your Instagram. And that's
now you're gonna get this rise up bump in popularity. You're gonna have all the blacksmiths are gonna be dying to make you stuff.
I think it's more the rise up is gonna get the bump up in popularity from Dan's Instagram following.
And I can send you one of these slightly bended blades for a spoon. I would do that.
So I've already got quite a lot of bent blades, actually. I've been experimenting with Rob now for a few years, and just not telling anyone about it.
You're acting like you don't know what I'm talking about. You're right in the middle of it.
Well, these are like Rob was just basically facilitating my weird ideas of funny curved knives with inside bevels, outside bevels, funny, like really funny kind of shaped curves so that facets on, because I always wondered why we have a straight for a curved form here, but a bent knife to get inside there. So I was making curved knives for the outside. So you had really nice curves on there, but then actually.
Yeah, I actually was doing that with one of the knives that George sent me, the very shallow bend. And I was actually doing exactly that, trying to use it, cleanly on the outside. But it's interesting because people will do that with with like a spoke shave, right? As well. Like you'll use a flat spoke shave for a rounded outer surface, and then you'll use a concave one to get like inside for the inside curve. And I think there's just something about the inside curve that seems impossible to do with a straight blade, whereas the outside curve, you can, work away at it.
Our hands naturally, when you curve your hand like this too, you make a scoop out motion. Trying to do a convex with a curved blade isn't as natural, I think, to our hand mechanics.
Maybe. So, quick question. So you're putting those facets across the back of the bowl so you're really establishing the faceting like right from the get-go to get the thicknessing as well as the facet in place.
Yeah, this is pretty much what I do. So I've done that on there to pinch in the neck a little bit to make this pinch a little bit easier, and I've also left this pinch quite wide until I get everything else ready, and then I can really kind of. But I actually quite like a lot wider neck than a lot of people do. So I've done that, and then on the back here, I keep these facets to 3 for quite a long time.
Okay.
Until I decide what I'm doing, because it means I've got a depth facet, and then I've got quite a steep curve facet.
Yeah.
And then I know that I've got plenty of room to kind of keep that curve, and that just follows along. And like we were saying, that's definitely not flat on there, but I'm not too worried about that.
Gotcha. Now, are you flowing those on the back of the bowl? Are you flowing those into the handle already?
Yeah, so that back one will run all the way down there, because then that gives me a very clear, definite profile. And what I'm trying to do is go from that convex, but slowly then we'll go into a concave, really slowly go into a concave, which then we'll go into a convex. But I want to do that really gently.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then these ones, they also flow in to a side one down here. And now you can see that I've got that top facet a little bit more established.
Yeah.
Thickness. I'm actually really liking how this one's turning out. It's kind of cute. I think it's the ones that you don't really care so much about, or it's not that you don't care, but you don't put so much.
You're not overthinking it as you're.
Yeah. Right, let me think. What am I going to do next? I'm probably just going to keep making sure that top curve meets really nicely. And on this one, I keep it flat here, and then I tilt it up so that it kind of comes against the grain a little bit. And then I tend to try and sweep across the grain.
Yep.
You can't really see anything. So then that will give me a nice look over there.
This ambidextrous carving is really a trip to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of freaking me out.
Is it? That's interesting.
Just because it's so foreign to me, my left hand is like useless almost, other than as a holding, device.
Oh, yeah.
It would be really good for your body, right? To spread the load out between.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a great thought.
It's one of the reasons that I started to do it, because I used to wake up with cramp in my hand, and I couldn't open my hand, and I'd have to prise it open because I was thinking, oh, you have to be a production carver and you have to be able to carve 20 spoons every day for a week. And I was trying to do that, and it just ruined my hand. And I just thought, this poor little hand is getting really weak. Right. So now what I'm probably going to do is now I'm going to kind of start roughing in that little I don't know what you'd call it.
Now's your chance to give it a name.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Well, what? I don't know.
The doohickey.
The nonchalant notch.
Yeah, I have a
Okay.
question. I have a question for you. I just started following you a few weeks ago, and I noticed you gave each post like a subheading next to your name.
Yeah.
When did you start doing that? And what are your, like, I think it's, do you post something and then you like kind of crystallize what that post is about and then go back and give it a little subtitle? I feel like that's an interesting phenomenon. I haven't seen anyone else doing that.
Right. Yeah. I guess it stemmed from something that Barnes said, and he said, "I like Instagram because it's like a little pocket scrapbook where I can keep these little moments of ideas in." And I thought, yeah, I like the idea. It's a little pocket scrapbook. That's a nice idea. And then I started. What was I doing? I wanted to come up with 3 words that summed up what I was thinking about at the time. So it started off with just 3 words, and then it came up with, what am I thinking about when I'm doing this? What's going on in my head? So yeah, I guess it's a way to sum up. I think you described it perfectly. It's a way to kind of sum up what I'm thinking about either the spoons or just in life in general, I guess.
So do you think of it as like an index where you can go back and find that topic because it's right there? Is it like a chapter title almost?
Yeah, I guess that, yeah, it's like a little chapter title. I think it sort of gives each post gives it some kind of focus. I don't know really. I guess I'm really glad you asked that, because now it's got me thinking about what is it about that, because I've been doing it for so long.
Because it almost acts like a teaser to me. I read the 3 words and then I'm like, I wonder what this is going to be about. And then I read the whole post and I'm like, how does that tie back to the 3 words? So it almost like draws focus in an interesting way.
I guess sometimes it's sometimes I will actually really write something, thoughts, ideas, and then sometimes it's just it's, to me it kind of relates, but maybe it doesn't always actually relate.
I quite like it. I've just seen your second latest one to do with the cracked shrink pop.
Yeah.
You say cracks let us see in.
Yeah.
And that just kind of describes just nicely.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I was like, oh, here's a crack. Oh no, that's a terrible thing.
But actually it's not.
and also I'd had an argument with, well, not an argument, but I'd had a bit of conflict with my girlfriend briefly for an afternoon. And I was thinking afterwards, we really connected. We had really good conflict resolution. We really came back to it. And I was thinking, that little crack that we were afraid of actually really brought us closer. It really did let some light into our relationship. So it also stems from that.
Right, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Kind of relating to my life. Right. So there's the kind of little, and this little kind of notch thing here, to me, helps accentuate this one long curve.
Yeah.
And then really accentuates this little bend. But also it's because it came from me doing my little bird swoops. And I was trying to make the bird look like it was kind of rearing up to tweet or something. And then you can kind of still see that I could put a bird in there, but it's just a different shape.
Does your thumb fit right in that nook?
The thumb doesn't fit in the nook, but what it does do is that where that's angled down, where I hold it, it actually, my finger rests really nicely in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Because what I tend to do on the back here, I want to lift that. So actually, for about 1 centimeter, I kind of just raise it up and put like a little bevel on there. Now now that's even nicer.
Oh yeah, I could feel that.
Yeah, sure. You feel that, yeah.
I'm holding a spoon and now I hate it. I hate how it feels because it doesn't have that graduating curve on the back where right where my finger hits it.
Don't hate the spoon. It's not the spoon.
I have to burn all my spoons now or go back and recarve that corner.
The So what I should say now is when I'm doing these, the back on the back, one thing I do is I try and curve the knife as I'm twisting. So I'm trying to shape at the same time and really trying to get a really nice convex. I'm not just trying to go straight, I'm really trying to twist it in 3 dimensions.
You know, when you do that with your wrists,
Yeah.
Because I'm having an issue with my wrist because I work on the computer 5 days a week, and so I'm trying now to be ambidextrous, etc. But I'm struggling with the wrist strength, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that when I'm doing something like that with the carving, and if I'm putting strength into it or effort, it hurts. So I was wondering if you've got any tips or.
Yeah, so one thing you can do is sometimes when I put curves in, I will actually choke this knife right up where the blade is usually a bit thinner, at least it is on a Mora.
Yeah.
And I will come across the grain to create a curve. And so I can come across the grain and create those curves.
Yeah.
And that is a lot easier because then all you're doing really is just squeezing your hand. You're not really twisting your wrist as much.
Right. Okay.
And I can come along and I can kind of do all the way around. And then the same on this side. If I just get here, I could just come along and kind of take it out that way and just use that. Does that make it? And then I can go from here to here. And I can move that. I can kind of move my whole arm and come across the grain. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Good. Right, so I'm kind of, the thing that I mostly actually play around with is the crank view. I think that's what I spend more time on than anything. And now I'm going to try and get, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to try and get this side. It's still got quite a slopey angle. I'm going to try and really accentuate that by almost undercutting it. And I'm going to really just twist the blade. And I'm going to over accentuate it for the video and kind of see what happens with it. And then usually when I do those little curves, I'll need to take more wood from the back here. And what I have started to do on this little section here is I started to start here and then twist all the way down to the neck so that I get this, I don't know if you can see it, you can't really see it. I get a kind of nice facet that kind of rides under there, and also it gives a bit of deeper shadow, which kind of accentuates the curves even more. I didn't realize how much I liked curves until I was doing it. I've got a question for anyone else that cares to answer it. I'm often interested in what was the trickiest part of the template that people found? Because someone said to me that that big facet was the hardest thing to get.
I didn't have much trouble with that. I was okay with that. And I guess what I've not done yet is tried the faceting on the back, and facets in general, especially across the back side of the spoon. We did this a little bit with Oren's template too, where he had the facets on, in his case, it was on the top of the handle. But I just, for whatever reason, getting those nice, clean, long, straight facets that you've got, kind of shown on in your case, they're curved. So it adds an additional trick to it in that there's these curves now in it that you're showing on the back of the handle. That would probably be, and I can't say it's tricky because I've tried it and failed. It's tricky because I'm intimidated by it and haven't even tried it yet.
Yeah,
so
I guess.
Dan, sorry.
No, go on.
You asked the question, Dan. So for me, this is Philly Gosport. bit that I found the most awkward was going round from that nook, that very tight nook at the top of the handle. Yeah. Going down the grain all the way around from that nook all the way down to the bottom. Not on the side elevation, but from the plan.
Like this way.
Yeah. So going round it and back and down.
Hang on, say
That I found really tight.
What, as in you're talking about plan view, so you're talking about going out here and coming back down again?
No. So sorry, it's about describing it appropriately. Sorry. So if you imagine that bit where your finger just was, that pointy outy bit. So the way I've carved it is from that point down to the bowl of the spoon in one stroke round. No, not the side, the flat, the big flat.
The front. The front surface.
Yeah. So I've gone all the way down that in a very tight radius and down. And I found that really difficult to get smooth.
Okay. So I guess I don't actually carve that necessarily in one. I actually probably carve it in maybe in 2 or 3. And so firstly, from the very tip, I will either start with my knife here. I don't know if you can really see that. Start with my knife there, and then I will pull. And then sometimes actually what I do with the tip of the knife is then, once I've got that, you can't really, there we go. Then I will swing my knife around to start pushing. So
it's exactly that stroke, but the twist at the top of that stroke is where I was having the challenge. Thank you.
So I'm starting that cut with my left hand and bringing it down, and then I'm continuing it with my right hand all the way down.
Yeah.
And
back to ambidextrous again. I'm not doing that yet.
Get on it. Get on it.
I won't have any fingers left.
But my thought was always, well, there was a point where I was carving with my dominant hand and I didn't know what the hell was going on. And so I had to really learn.
Yeah.
And I cut my finger sometimes. So why?
That's fair cop. I'll take that. Okay.
And I think it's actually safer to then teach your non-dominant hand when you've actually got a good teacher, which is your right hand. Whereas before, when I started, I did not have a good teacher. In fact, I didn't have any teacher.
So I'm sorry if I'm going to hog a question again, but that theory of right hand teaching left hand, I didn't quite catch the first time round. It didn't really sink in my head. Can you try that again a little?
Yeah. So when I was the pull stroke, if I'm trying to teach my left hand that, I'll do it, but I'll do it without cutting, and I'll think about what I'm doing, and I'll think about what's actually going on. Okay, I'm pivoting like this, and I've got my hand, so I'm really thinking about where everything is. And then all I do is swap. I think, okay, it was like that, and then it was like that. And then I just try and translate that to my left hand. Does that make sense?
It's really helpful. So it's like a dummy stroke, and then do it for real on the other side. Yeah, okay, I'll give it a try.
It's about questioning and really looking at what I'm actually doing, because it wasn't until doing that, and then I really could see, you know, when people might struggle with the chest lever grip, and you're thinking, no, look, just do it like this. And then you do it and it's really easy. And then you go back to the beginner and suddenly they can't do it again. I cannot do that grip with my non-dominant hand almost at all. I've only just started to get the hang of it, and still it feels so uncomfortable. So even in my non-dominant hand, I still haven't got the hang of how that cut really works. I can do it with my right hand so easily. It's my favorite cut. So I think
whenever I've tried that, the aspect of it that I find the hardest by doing that with the left hand is controlling the bevel angle.
Yeah.
You know, the angle at which it addresses the wood. Because you've got that fine motor skill now with the right hand that I can, you know, I can pretty much in any grip, I've got control over how much wood I'm taking, but that's the part that I don't have with the left whenever I've tried it.
And I always actually, when I was really learning it, I would only actually carve with my non-dominant hand for a few minutes. Then I would stop, because I didn't want to fuck anything up. I didn't want to kind of keep trying really hard. I just thought constant, consistent practice over time will yield some results.
Yeah. So I know while we were on the break, some people had a question. And I know you had a post the other day where you responded to somebody, and it was a question about your painting and your color exploration. So of course the immediate question is, well, what do you use, right? And of course your response was, everybody should just kind of explore that for themselves. So out of curiosity, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
Are you sure you want to go here?
But well, I'm just curious, like what your reasoning is for that thought process, and like, does that apply in other aspects of carving as well? Like, is there something that's different about the painting aspect as opposed to the carving aspect that leads you to feel like you'd prefer not to address that in the painting world, as opposed to say some?
Yeah, you just froze there for a second. I think I got your question.
Sorry, I froze there, but hopefully you got the gist of what I was asking.
Yeah.
It's more about your thought as to like how that's different than say somebody asking about, well, what knife are you using, or what grip are you using, or
Well, personally, I don't really enjoy answering any of those questions, because partly it's one of those questions where I think I had to just play and experiment. When I was carving, I had no one to ask any of these questions, and I actually believe that kind of helped me explore a lot more. And with the painting thing, I worry that people are just going, that in our day and age, that it's so easy just to get the answer. You can go online and you can say, what's the answer to this? Boom, I've got it. And then you don't play. There isn't a journey from yours to this. And my painting has come along from loads of trial and error. And I think that's such a valuable, albeit slightly annoying, really valuable process to go to. So I kind of don't want to inhibit people's process of just playing and maybe coming up with something way more interesting than I would come up with.
Yep.
I've been thinking about using kind of emulsion paint and seeing what that happens, and putting all sorts of things on there, because at the end of the day, paint has been around for many years. So I'm just going to get mine. And I worry that sometimes it does come across as like, oh, he's going to give up his secrets. But
that's right. You just want to hide the secret formula.
Yeah, it comes across that way, I'm sure.
No, I suspected that what you've just said was your reasoning, but I kind of wanted to have you elucidate on it, a little bit more.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to actually kind of clarify maybe to some people as why I don't give that, because I think also I'm kind of worried that they're just going to go out, get that paint and try and match what I've done instead of getting any paint and exploring their own ideas. But I think that probably comes from being a fine artist and spending a lot of time exploring with paint and other things. Because I've also used magic markers. I've used magic markers on them. I've got a couple of spoons that I think I've sold that were actually magic marker.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, oh, that's a beautiful color. I want that in a spoon. I tell you what, and I've used these crayons. Have you ever seen these before?
No.
Yeah, I colored a couple of spoons in a few months ago with some of these. Tried it out,
wow.
oiled it. The color has remained. And these are like these 3-in-1 kind of paint sticks. So that gives you some idea of just playing with whatever color you have. Right, I'm just
Well, it's that I think what happens is, like, again, it's very easy to get caught up in the preciousness of the object that we're working on, and whether it's trying different carving techniques or whether it's whatever it might be, we get so invested in not wanting to screw it up or mess it up that I'm super prone to that, and as a result, you do get stuck. You get inhibited because you're afraid. There's that fear of not doing it right or not doing it well, or so that's one of the things that I think so many people admire so much about your carving, your process, is that there's this tremendous freeness and sense of play about it that I mean, you've articulated it better than I can, but
I will say this: plenty of the things that people really enjoy about the painting of my work come from total fuck-ups, come from covering up things that I didn't like that I just done. I thought, oh, that's horrible. I'm going to paint over it again. Oh, that's horrible. I'm going to paint over it again. Oh, I really hate all of that. I'm going to try and wash it off. Oh, wow, that looks really nice. I'm going to do it again. So yeah, I think those mistakes are really underrated in their value.
yeah.
For beginner, advanced, anyone, really. So I just want to say, I know I've been talking for right now. I'm just started the bowl and doing the hollowing, and kind of, I tend to try and hollow with this fancy Nick Westerman tool that I bought many years ago. And I try and get the curve, and I try and actually scribe and get right at the back there to get a nice clean kind of sharp. Because what I realize is that actually I prefer a really shallow curve into the bowl. However, when you photograph that, there's no real definition.
Yeah.
So a slight undercut here gives a definition when you're taking a picture. So that's kind of
interesting.
That's what I'm doing there. I'm actually doing it purely for aesthetics, or otherwise I wouldn't do it. And I do almost the entire hollowing across grain.
Okay.
I know a lot of people do it down the grain, which I do, but at the very end.
Just elaborating on you saying about not talking about painting and stuff like that. Whenever anyone asks me about chip carving or detail carving, I always tell them that they just need to get doing it.
Yeah.
When I say from the beginning, not from like you learn how to carve a spoon, then you start to learn how to detail carve. Because if you start doing your detail carving at the same time as you're learning how to do the spoon, they'll progress along at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, experimenting, mess ups, happy accidents.
Yeah, definitely. There's no real right or wrong.
I've painted things that you say over and over again.
Yeah.
I've sat there carving it back off.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I did with the lettering on the Ring of Fire one that I did the other day. I tried pyroing it on, and I was just like, oh my God, that's just so visually cluttered. It looks horrible. It totally detracts from it. So I carved it all off.
Yeah, I thought that was lovely that you shared that, because I think it also shared that you had enough kind of wherewithal to make that decision.
Yeah.
Get caught up in something new that you've done and thought, yeah, this thing's really fun and exciting. So actually, the idea was good and you could have kept it, but actually, it's almost kind of brave then to just take it off instead.
Yeah.
Because so many times I've had a beautiful bit of grain, somewhere to handle. And I just thought, I really want to keep that. And then it just looks horrible in the overall spoon. And then to end up carving it off. So I made a massive mistake on this one because it's really soft wood, and it's one of the reasons I don't carve birch, alder, or lots of really soft wood, is that the crank now looks really ugly. As this cut here I just made, and it's made everything too shallow. And I want to fix everything. Because you see this curve on this one is so much nicer. It's nice and round, and now this one kind of, I don't know, it looks kind of ugly to me.
So are you talking about the fact that it's like a recurve in there and you wanted it to be?
It's going too sharply into the concave. There's no convex now. It's just
okay.
It's really flat.
Gotcha.
And it makes the bowl look really flat. I think I could probably work it out by changing some of the other angles. But yeah, I don't really like going on there.
That's actually something, hearkening back to the fact that you have your background as a fine artist and being trained in fine art. I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts regarding the spoon carving. I mean, there's the standard old art versus craft. What's art, what's craft, what but I'm just curious in your own, from your perspective, how all that plays out and how you see your spoon carving, with respect to, art versus craft versus some blend of the two, if they're distinct or not, just that whole blah. If you've got any thoughts on that.
I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but yeah, I think spoke to Barn actually on the chat with him a bit about it, and I think one thing, I don't really have a fixed idea, but I definitely have some strong views that art is not superior to craft. And so when someone talks about your spoon and say, wow, that's beautiful artwork, to me, they're saying that there's a hierarchy, that art is higher than craft. And that's not something I necessarily agree with, because I personally believe that crafters do not need art, but art people need crafters. There's so much, when people would bronze things, bronze sculptures and whatever, they needed a craftsperson. But as an artist, you always need a craftsperson. But as a craftsperson, I don't need an art. I don't need my work to be art, unless maybe I want to charge £1,000 for every spoon and call it an art object. So I guess I'm coming from a slight bitterness to the world of art because I was in it for so long. And so I just think that there's a lot of ego, a lot of snobbery, and a lot of, looking down on craft as if it's something just utilitarian, and and it kind of frustrates me that you can't always get the right price. So that's my
interesting. Like I've always thought, like too, in terms of, I think what people are getting at, right, is you've got the spoon as an object, as a functional object that serves a functional purpose. And then you've got the spoon when you start thinking about it in terms of form, shape, line, decorative elements, color, added elements, whether it's chip carving, pyrography, painting, call rosing, that are quote unquote art, or seemingly more on that side of the spectrum. So there's like, what's the function of art? The function of art, is to get us either to just inspire, some emotion, right? Joy, curiosity, whatever it might be. And so that crossover between that aspect of an object versus the purely functional aspect of an object, to me is sort of what I'm not articulating clearly, but like there's some element of that somehow comes into play as well. That somehow people look down on a functional object as, it's somehow lesser than something that's a pure fine art, quote unquote, whether it's a painting, a sculpture, so I agree with you. I think that in people's minds, they think, it's inspiring some amazing, feeling that oh, you've gone beyond just the rough function of a spoon and you've used it to communicate some emotion or feeling.
Yeah, I think all I'll say on this is check out Grayson Perry's Reef Lectures.
What is that again?
Grayson Perry is a British artist, and there are these things called the Reef Lectures, and they have loads of different lectures, but he did a series of lectures called Beating the Bounds, and he has a very clear, so was it made by an artist? Is it in an art gallery? Does it have an art context? Does it have a concept? So when you start asking those questions, then you can decide whether it's art or not. Is this spoon made by an artist? And if it's not, and it's not in a gallery, then perhaps it's not art.
Sorry, but that sounds like utter not so nice stuff. Only because it's not in a gallery doesn't mean it's not a piece of art. art has just one thing to do, to provoke. And it's nothing about, is it an artist who created an object? Or doesn't matter if it's painting a spoon or, I don't know, a pot, or a craftsperson or whoever. If it's provoking thoughts, if it's provoking reactions, then it is, in a sense, a piece of art.
So then you get into the tricky element of, you could start calling anything a piece of art, but it's not a piece of art. And who gets to choose? Who gets to choose if something's art and if it isn't? And something that Grayson says is that if an artist gets to choose whether something's art, they can also perhaps use that power to say something is not.
Are you familiar with Bauhaus?
Yeah.
For those who are not familiar, Bauhaus is essentially a concentrating on the medium, to put it roughly, and to be true to a form, and true to the medium, sorry. So when you see this school and compare it with, I don't know, Rubens, for example, it's completely different. There's something in the background.
No, I don't know.
Okay. There's it's completely different, and yet people say it's art, but it doesn't mean it has to be done by an artist. I mean, you earlier said it, an artist is depending on craftsperson.
So I think maybe you're getting stuck on one. So Grayson is trying to not give you rules by saying, he's trying to get you to think about if something is art. And he said, perhaps you could ask yourself these questions, but not just asking one question irrespective of the others. I think that question, is it made by an artist, is part of a collection of questions. Is it made by an artist in an art gallery? Does it have an art context? Does it have a concept? You're asking a bunch of questions, not just one. So I think you've taken one question and thought that it has to have that, but it doesn't necessarily. I think it's more asking yourself questions of,
yeah, it's more like a spectrum of potential, you know, a lot of gray area, not so much a black and white. You have to check off all the boxes in order to meet the definition.
Yeah, because I'm fairly with you that when I was doing art, I was very interested into an art movement called Fluxus. And they believed that anything could be art. And actually one of the things that they really enjoyed is experience. So they said, putting your feet in some wet Wellington boots and feeling the squish and the squitch that it makes and the feeling is art. And I really enjoyed that.
That's
cool.
brilliant.
Yeah, so I'm not
Right, I'm wrong.
saying that that's what I necessarily believe, but I just think that it's a dangerous area to start calling anything a piece of art.
Yeah.
Because I worry that we're trying to elevate something by calling it art.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I would add,
art should be communicating something. It should be communicating an idea, a concept, a feeling, an emotion, a theory. And I think if it's not doing that, then I would say it's not art.
you know, that's interesting and productive conversation. The guidelines you're talking about seem very contemporary, because let's say there's art that is in a cave that no one has seen in 10,000 years, and we get an earthquake, or we get a development where somebody digs, and all of a sudden we see this beautiful work, these petroglyphs or these cave paintings, and no one has seen them for 10,000 years. But so it isn't in a gallery, and all those rules are kind of provocative, but is it not art? I mean, I think some of these distinctions are totally useless. And they often talk about someone who's so good that they elevate craft to art, as if art is a higher echelon.
Yeah.
I think that's horseshit.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the thing that I have main issue with, is that believing that somehow we're elevating the craft. And I want to say that craft is its own thing on its own plane that's really high. You know, I think it's as valuable and as high as anything else. There's nothing.
Well, that actually raises an interesting kind of question when it comes to and we're kind of going far afield from your demo here. We've kind of turned more into spoon talk than demo, I suppose. So if there's something that you want to say, I know you've been showing some aspects of where you're at as you're carving along. Is there anything that you wanted to address about where you're at this point?
No, thanks, Chuck. I think it can be very easy to get stuck into a conversation. But I think one thing I do want to kind of say is what I'm doing is, because you're seeing me make cuts, but I'm making decisions. And so I'm constantly putting it in my mouth. That'll tell me where thickness and thinness is.
Okay.
Pass it on the top. And kind of, you want to say hello?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour.
This is John. Say hello, John.
Yeah.
Say hello.
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 Hello. Very nice to meet you.
So a woodworker, 6.5. He's been carving, what, for about 6 months? We've been teaching you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, go get it. Yeah. He's got a thing that he wants to sell.
Oh.
Oh, but he doesn't want to sell it now, so it's like most spoon cutters, you make it you really like, and then you think, oh, actually, I don't want to sell it.
So Dan, you're the only spoon carver I've seen constantly putting a spoon in his mouth to judge the feel and the pop. And earlier you said something, the audio was not very good. You talked about whether your upper lip had to drop down, and I didn't follow what you were doing.
Okay, good question. So here on the back rim, most people will put at least 3 fingers width in their mouth and 3 fingers wide. And usually I've seen a lot of people, their upper lip will grab here. And so if my top lip catches here and has to bump down to here, that's really uncomfortable. So I try and make it so the top lip will catch just to the back here and then scoop that out there. So that's a really nice curve.
That's what I do.
That's what he does.
Yeah. So you're talking about really the length of the bowl.
Not just the length of the bowl, because the bowl could be really short and you could have a steep drop in that, or you could have a very short bowl and a very gentle curve into that. And I was saying the reason that I have a steeper drop into here, and probably do have a little bit longer bowl than I normally would, is so that your mouth doesn't actually catch on there.
This is the thing that I made.
Oh,
Can you
wow.
describe
Nice.
It's a thing for the door to stop it. From Stoiter.
Bright colors too.
doorstep? Yeah.
It's a door.
Yeah.
So when the door, if it closes, you can just put it in and then it doesn't close.
And
It
it-
prevents it from closing with a big bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we had. Well done. And he did it all himself. It was amazing.
Yeah.
He came up with that idea himself. So I would say I'm pretty much finished in terms of, this is where I get tired or bored, maybe.
Yeah.
Where everything's pretty much done, but there's just lots of details that I would want to do. And for me, it's not about drying. It's actually, I like making at least 5, and then I can come back and think about all the details. But you can see I've got that facet there. And actually what's happening, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
It's got other lines running into that by accident. And so I'd think about how I would accentuate that, or I kind of tweak that, and then at the back, I've kind of got some facets that I would wonder what I normally make this one off center as well, because it's where this finger hits. Because when we hold the spoon, it's asymmetrical. And so I kind of, this finger that comes in here, I kind of like making a swoop on the back to match.
Yeah.
But I think I'm kind of I quite like how cute this one is.
Yeah.
I think it's better than
I like it.
I'm not happy with the crank, but I am happy with kind of the shape and the feel, and I'm happy with the little thing there. And I'm wondering whether to put a little notch in here to make it look a bit more like a bird or something. And I'm kind of happy with how that is. It's maybe a little bit wide, so I might thin it down a little bit. But other than that, I would say that's pretty much finished. And that's the kind of chunky axe out that I started with.
Now, do you go, when you do your finish cuts and all that, I'm assuming you go around, do you chamfer all your edges and?
Yeah, I usually, Dave's little Sloyd knife.
Yeah.
I would tend to use that one sometimes. But that one is really nice for getting in that little corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting around there where you almost carve up.
Yeah.
But I think lastly, what I'll say is when I'm doing the chamfers, my idea was often I could make a complete even chamfer all the way, so it's the same width all the way. But what I started to do, particularly with the little notch, is to actually change the size of the chamfer to create a little bit more interest. So then you're creating not just a chamfer, but also almost another interesting facet that can change. So I would make it come out here, then go in.
Gotcha.
And then maybe come back out here a little bit. So that when it catches that shadow, it has just a little bit more line and it's not just following a line all the way around. So I find that a little bit kind of static and can be
interesting.
So thinking about that, of how the two lines of any facet or chamfer play off each other is something that I kind of like a lot. But I think it will. And I guess actually this is what I'm doing the most, is doing that, thinking, how will it work in the barn? And then I suppose lastly, what I tend to do is with the very end, I like this to be a curve and not flat.
Okay.
And I can't remember off the top of my head why I do that, but it's definitely a reason. But then when it comes to the underside of the bowl here, just to create a bit of strength, I tend to make quite a long chamfer all the way, so that there's strength now, but I've thinned the very tiny edge down a little bit.
Okay.
So I've kind of thinned it down so that the lollipop feel, I don't know if you know, Fritjof talks about the lollipop feel. So that it should
so you do that thing where you're basically tapering the thickness of the bowl at the bottom is thicker and then it's tapering up to a thinner rim. And then you do an additional long chamfer to thin it even more right at the edge.
Yeah, so it's got some strength.
Gotcha.
It really rides up there perfectly.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to make sure that my fingers come off nicely all the time.
Nice.
And I'll probably thin down the neck a little bit more, and I maybe shift this a little bit more. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we went on there.
Awesome. Does anybody have any other questions for Dan?
Oh.
I'm trying to sort out which question to ask first.
My first one is, are you anywhere near Durham?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes. We're up in Sunderland.
Pardon?
We're up in Sunderland.
Oh, okay, not far.
Yeah.
Do you know Matty Whitaker?
Yes. Well, I know of him, but don't know. No.
Okay, so that's usually where I am when I'm in Durham. He's like
right. Okay.
2 miles outside of the centre of Durham.
Yeah, I think it's yes, because if you were up for doing any lessons.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I really want to get back into lessons again.
Yeah.
So yeah, send me a DM.
DM.
There you go. I've decorated the spoon.
Oh,
awesome!
And it almost matches his T-shirt.
Yeah.
I think somebody laid claim to that then.
What about, and then let's add a bit more decoration to highlight some of the facets.
Well, we've got plenty of crayons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's one of the beauties of being an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Uh-huh.
And then I could probably.
I just,
Oh, that's good.
I like
Very
the
cool.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice color.
Aye.
It is a nice color, actually.
Keep it as that.
So are those crayons or is that, are those
These are called
pastel?
Stabilo.
Stabilo.
Stabilo. Yeah, they're called woodies. They're 3-in-1. Oh, that's going to be backwards. That's handy. Yeah, you can buy big ones like this, or you can buy little ones as well. But this is what I used to use for a lot of my artwork.
Yeah.
Very cool.
The bowl now. Yeah, let's paint the bowl. Yeah, no. Yeah, has anyone else got any questions? I'm happy to answer questions or show anything.
Yeah, one. When doing the bow,
yeah,
I usually end up with 2 straight lines, right and left.
Straight line.
Yeah, because I go quite narrow. So when you imagine the bow, instead of
back of the bowl or the
no, sides, on the sides.
Oh, here.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And I usually struggle to get them into this roundish shape. Any idea?
Do you mean with the rim being rounded?
Yes, because it's when it comes to Xing, and I do the top bit.
Yeah.
That goes first in the mouth. I round that, no problem. Even with the X,
okay.
But the sides, I don't know. I make a mistake somewhere. I haven't figured out where.
So you're getting the sides of your bowl too straight as opposed to a nice rounded curve to the sides of the bowl.
Thank you for clarification, Chuck. I didn't know how to formulate it.
Did you mean this curve?
I don't think, oh, you do.
And are you saying that you get a kind of a straight bit
Right, like a flat top?
And you can't get that in?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I need a tip. That's all I need.
No, well, luckily we have this one, which is at that stage. So you can see here, I've got some depth. And can you see that there is a line being created here that's a curve? And can you see at the very top of here, there's wood to remove?
Yes.
So maybe what I'll do is I'll hollow out a little bit so that you can see maybe a bit easier. So maybe one thing, I don't know if you hollow out before you make that. Because sometimes sometimes hollowing out a little bit before you make this cut can be helpful. I think I kind of have enough power and stuff with the knife, which I tend not to do that.
Right.
And so now I'm going to create a curve here. And I start at the very end. I start up here. And I start quite flat. The knife is quite flat to that. And then and I don't have to do it in one go. As I come round, I'll tilt the knife up. So I'm starting off at the very tip like this. And then
by tilting, you're changing the angle?
Yeah. And I'm also changing the knife, so I'll start quite flat. And as I come around here, I'll tip it up here. And then as I come up, I'll start tilting the knife up, but carry on that way. So it's like, in fact, yeah. And then
I think I get you now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm coming around and then coming up, and I'm trying to get to just the neck. Can you see where that cut is ending?
I see.
That's all I'm trying to do. And then all I'm trying to do is watch that curve, and if that's a nice curve, I can leave it, and then I can hollow out. I can use that top line that I've created, which should be a nice kind of curve, but then I can match the bottom to that top curve.
Yep.
That makes sense?
Yep, totally.
Makes absolutely sense. What I usually do is start from the neck.
Ah, okay.
So that's my mistake.
So
Yeah, the challenge there is you end up running into the grain as you're coming down, and then you can't get a clean, smooth across that grain. And that's the beauty of that cut that Dan was showing, is as you tip up, it also makes it easier to, because you're essentially at that point starting to cut back up the grain.
Yeah.
But by tilting it out, you're able to smooth through that.
and not only that, I'm actually ending up starting to come across the grain.
Yeah.
I tilt up there. And also one thing that I think a lot of people miss is I'm also squeezing my knife against the wood quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that gives you a lot of control. And then if you're not going to then come to the other side and do the same thing with your non-dominant hand, that's when I would come along. But I would do exactly the same thing.
Yep.
And I would come and kind of come, instead of the tip of the blade coming around there, the base, the handle of the blade is coming around. Thing. Whereas this way the tip was coming up. So it's kind of the same thing. But then what I find is that I can only reach here safely. I can't do it all in one go. So then I tend to rest it on my leg and try and blend that cut in at that shallow angle and come around. Because yeah, then you can start looking at, is my curve nice? And I find that dropping your curve, usually to the third, but about halfway, coming and dropping down there and then starting to come up a little bit earlier than you think is usually a better way of doing it, instead of trying to have a steep transition at the third point. I don't know if that made any sense.
Hey, Dan, I apologize, but could you show that how you were doing that on the knee again? My internet connection froze at that point, and that's going to freeze the recording.
Okay, yeah. So if we've just come along, we've just done that little bit around here, it's really hard to get the very rim of the bowl. So I tend to hook that around there, and then it's shallow on it when I pull, then I
Gotcha.
I'm not just dragging it across, I'm pulling it, and then I'm trying to blend that in to that curve. Because
Nice.
then when I get to that last little bit there, that's when I tend to just use the thumb push.
Yep.
Just to kind of blend that in. Because then if you want a nice drop down there, I can start coming along. And what I like doing is that once I've done that part of the bowl, I like kind of really gently creating a curve this way, where I'll just go back and forth. And I think that makes a really nice line. Anyway, I'm rambling now because I'm hungry. So
No worries. Listen, I have to actually bring this to a close anyway, because I have stuff I have to slip off to do. You've given us a tremendous amount of your time, your energy, and your thoughts. I really appreciate it. I apologize for anybody who maybe had additional questions that we didn't get a chance to address. But I do want to be respectful of Dan and his time. So maybe if you have other questions, maybe you could DM him if you've got others.
I know,
Yes, Dan.
I have one more thing I forgot. So here's a finish.
Ooh,
That's nice.
This one.
Oh,
That's even nicer.
wow, those are spectacular.
This one, I bought a rip saw recently. And it's rip sawed down to there. So this is the rip sawed surface. Then I've cleaved it to get this surface. I thought I'd just show some finished ones. And that's kind of.
That is beautiful.
And then, yeah, so this one is just recently sold again. This is kind of one.
Looks like a sun.
Playing around with the length of the handle and stuff is good as well. This one's like a disco.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's disco spoons.
Those are beautiful.
A little
Those are
bit
really
on
lovely.
Japanese bowls.
Oh yeah, and this is from a new batch that you might have seen, and this is the first little bit of painting that I've done. It just 2 layers of different pinks to get that, because actually I love seeing the grain come through.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of like a little cute version. And then
Like rippled metal, layered metal. The
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah.
Oh, like the Damascus steel type pattern.
That's the one. That's what I meant. Yeah.
I thought this one was a really good example of how I fucked it up twice, and then it actually turned out quite nice.
I was going to say that I saw you when you posted that. I love that. That's such a cool effect.
It was me trying to do it. I wanted to do it pink, and then pink didn't really work, and then I wanted to fade it, and that didn't really work, and then I left it, and it dried in that way, and it kind of worked. And then this one I'm not so happy with. I textured it and then put 2 layers of paint on it, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I still am not happy with it.
Maybe you could rub it with
Magic eraser.
or a shimmering.
No, honestly, magic eraser.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try it out.
Because what I didn't want to do was take sandpaper to do it and make all the marks. That's not what I want to do. I kind of wanted the texture to be almost hidden and less highlighted. I kind of wanted the shape to be all talking, but I like the surprise that there's texture there.
Yeah.
Fade from where you can see the texture, and I wanted it to look as if the texture disappears. But anyway. And then lastly, this one was a bit of an experiment, which I'm not sure I'm happy with. This one's got loads of weird chip carving on. But this is a slight variation on the theme of the asymmetrical handle.
Like those look like round. They almost look like they were done with like a gouge as opposed to a straight blade. Are you just rotating the blade when you do those chips? Because they look rounded as opposed to like
what the little triangle chips.
Oh, they are triangles. Okay, sorry. It was just because it was further away. They almost looked round. It's just the poor resolution of the camera.
It looks like a spine, so you could triple your price and sell it to a chiropractor.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. I'm glad I did it as an experiment. Sometimes you just got to do it to know what it looks like. But I kind of like it, but then sometimes I don't. Then I like it, then I don't. I like things
From here, it looks a bit like an alligator.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take all of them. And then there's one kind of plain.
Beautiful.
That
Yeah.
one.
That's nice.
What I like about these ones is that I don't know if you can pick it up. Is that facet? It's in the corner. No, it doesn't really pick it up. In the corner here, it starts to undercut it a little bit. And then can you see the third? There's a third facet that kind of appears.
Yeah.
It sort of disappears.
That is cool.
And it's sort of, it's really twisty. In fact, look at that. That is.
Yeah, that's what mine are looking like. That's what I was talking about.
Then when you've got that long facet there, super nice. Yeah. So what I want to say is these recent ones that will go up to anyone that was on this Zoom call, it's free postage if you would like to buy one. I'll probably have them up later in the week.
Oh, cool.
So any of you on here, I'm not going to take names. I'll trust that you're on here if I didn't see you. But free postage to anyone, anywhere in the world.
So just reference, I was on the demo.
Yeah. Just say,
Honor system, but don't tell anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite simple. To prove that they were there, they have to name all the plants we can see in the background.
Like what are those things called to tell if you're a robot or not? And they
Capture.
Capture, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you have to tell me if there has to be cats on the pillow, plants, and some. I don't know what else is in there.
Awesome.
Great.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring this to a close and end the recording. Thank you so much again, Dan. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who showed up.
Thanks, Dan.
I don't know why we're
Thank
recording,
you.
but we are.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Cheers all.
Thank you.
Thank you.